Hi, and welcome back. In one of our videos from last week, we shared about how avoidant attachment shows up in
Mm.
friendships, and we listened to your feedback in the comment section. We heard that many of you felt that this is a missing space in discussions about attachment, and you wanted more videos that provide education and understanding on this topic. You shared your stories of loss and heartbreak when a friend was unable to show up for you in friendships the way you needed.
So today, we're diving into this topic that so many of you shared resonates deeply: attachment styles in friendships. Specifically, how someone can be anxious in romantic relationships yet avoidant in their friendships. With the story of Tess, we'll explore why someone might develop different attachment patterns in love versus friendships and what it can teach us about healing and connection.
So let's start by introducing Tess, a character whose journey reflects what many people experience. Tess grew up with an anxious attachment style, shaped by early experiences of loss and instability. As she sought understanding of the ways in which her childhood relationships were affecting her adult connections, Tess embarked on a path of self discovery and growth. This journey led her first to therapy as a client, where she worked to untangle the patterns she had developed, and eventually to becoming a therapist herself. Her professional and personal growth intertwined, helping her to make sense of her attachment dynamics.
When Tess's father left the family shortly before her second birthday, it created a foundational sense of abandonment. Her mother, working long hours to provide for the family, was often physically and emotionally unavailable. Tess clung to relationships where she could, seeking security and connection, but often feeling like it was just out of reach.
In her childhood friendships, Tess desperately sought belonging and validation, even in situations where her efforts were met by rejection. She vividly remembers being excluded from conversations in high school, trying to edge into the circle of girls only to find their backs turned against her. These moments left an imprint, reinforcing the belief that she wasn't enough or couldn't truly belong.
This anxious pattern carried into her romantic relationships, where she often feared abandonment and overinvested in her partners. For Tess, the stakes felt higher in love. Romantic partners became a stand in for the security she never felt in her early family life.
However, as Tess matured, something interesting happened. After years of personal growth, therapy, and meeting her partner Josh, she found herself in a secure and loving romantic relationship. But when it came to friendships, Tess noticed a pattern. She tended to avoid emotional closeness. She kept her friends at arm's length, avoided vulnerable conversations, and sometimes even withdrew when they reached out for connection.
Tess recalls a moment when a close friend opened up about a deeply personal struggle. Her friend shared something raw and heartfelt, clearly seeking connection and support. Instead of leaning into the conversation, Tess felt a wave of discomfort and found herself emotionally pulling away, not feeling comfortable with that depth of emotional exchange with her friend. Later, Tess reflected on why it felt so natural to offer reassurance and emotional presence to her partner, Josh, but so difficult to reciprocate vulnerability with her friends. She realized that her professional training as a therapist had given her tools to help others navigate their struggles, but it had also reinforced her tendency to keep the focus off of herself. In therapy sessions, it felt safe to share pieces of her story in a way that wasn't about her seeking support. But with friends, the dynamic required mutual vulnerability, a challenge that Tess was still learning to navigate.
Tess realized that her discomfort stemmed from a deeper pattern. Friends had often shared with her that while she was a great listener and always available to hear about their problems, they didn't feel like they truly knew her. Tess rarely opened up about her own struggles, creating a barrier that left her relationships feeling one sided. She recognized that in her role as therapist, she thrived by focusing entirely on others. It was safe. Her job was to support and reassure, not to share her own vulnerabilities. Even when she did self disclose to clients, it was in a controlled and purposeful way. I went through something similar, and this is how I overcame it. She wasn't in a position of needing the support herself, which made those disclosures feel safe and manageable.
But with friends, the dynamic was different. Relationships required mutual vulnerability, and her friends longed for the reciprocity Tess found so challenging to offer. Tess often wondered, did her reluctance to share make her come across as distant or even too perfect? And was this avoidance ultimately preventing her from experiencing the depth of connection she craved? Does this sound familiar to you? If so, you're not alone. Let's unpack why this happens.
Attachment styles aren't fixed, and they can vary across relationship types. Here's why. Tessa's anxious attachment in romantic relationships stemmed from her early experiences with inconsistent caregiving. Romantic partners became stand ins for the security she craved as a child. Tess often sought reassurance and connection, fearing abandonment, even in healthy relationships. Over time, therapy helped her learn to trust and develop secure attachment and love. On the other hand, Tessa's friendships were shaped by her experiences of rejection and exclusion in adolescence. To protect herself from the pain of being judged or left out, she developed an avoidant tendency in her friendships. Unlike romantic relationships where the stakes felt worth the risk, friendships seemed more unpredictable and potentially harmful. So while romantic relationships felt worth the risk for Tess, friendships felt more uncertain. Avoidance became her way of protecting herself from the vulnerability and potential pain of being let down by friends. Tess found it easier to withdraw than to risk disappointment or rejection.
This pattern of being anxious in love but avoided in friendships is surprisingly common. It's normal for attachment styles to vary across different types of relationships. What matters is recognizing the patterns and then understanding their origins. Avoidant tendencies often develop as a shield against past hurts. While they may feel protective, they can also prevent deeper connections. For Tess, avoidance in friendships was a way to maintain control and shield herself from vulnerability. Awareness of these patterns is the first step toward change. By identifying her avoidant behaviors, Tess began to question whether they were truly serving her or holding her back.
Have you noticed different attachment styles in your own relationships? Perhaps, like Tess, you felt anxious in romantic relationships, but distant or avoidant in friendships. Or maybe you've experienced the opposite. Share your experiences in the comments. We'd love to hear your perspective. Your stories not only help us connect, but also inspire others who may be going through similar experiences.
Attachment is a journey, and Tessa's story shows us that it's possible to grow and heal. By understanding the roots of her patterns, she took the first steps towards creating deeper connections in all areas of her life.
Tessa's story is a journey of self discovery and growth. And while she hasn't figured it all out yet, that's okay. We're all works of progress in this journey of life. An important part of her story is her self awareness and her desire and willingness to go through these challenges so that she can show up more authentically in all of her relationships. Remember, we're all in this
Together.
together.